All right, so we're diving into Anathem this time. You guys really threw us for a loop with this one. It's, well, math is like a religion, and the universe, well, let's just say it's a lot more than we thought.
Yeah, what really gets me about this book is how Stephenson takes hardcore sci-fi and then, boom, hits you with these huge questions about, like, knowledge, reality, even, like, what even is existing, you know?
Definitely not your typical space opera. We're talking walled monasteries, they call them convents, and these dedicated folks called the Avowed. They spend their lives studying theorics, math and science, but with a spiritual side, kind of.
Yeah, it's a wild mix. You got, like, intellectual stuff mixed with crazy adventures. The encyclopedia parts, they give us a peek into the history and how the universe works in this world. And then the story, bam, throws us right into the action with this young Fra. His name's Erasmus. It's like ancient Greece meets Star Trek, but somebody threw in a copy of The Name of the Rose just for kicks.
And speaking of challenges, let's jump into this world. You got these consents, completely cut off from the outside, what they call the secular world. And the Vout, the guys are Fraz, women are Sirs, they got to follow this strict discipline, can't talk to the outside much. They even have different, like, eras based on stuff like the Sack, where the consents got attacked and a bunch of their knowledge got lost.
The Sack, that's like a turning point for them. Totally changes how they see the world, makes them super suspicious of, everyone outside. You can see why they'd be all about protecting knowledge, like hardcore.
Yeah, makes sense. Then there's the Convox, this big gathering, all the different consents, happens every few centuries. Our story, it's happening in 3689 AR during one of these Convoxes. Something tells me it ain't going to be your typical conference, though.
Definitely not. The parts you picked, they hint at some serious drama going down, both inside the consents and between them and the secular world.
Right. There's this, like, shadowy figure from the secular world, they call him the Warden of Heaven, says he's got some connection to the consents, but they see him as a total threat. And then there's Fras Orolo, he's Erasmus's mentor, gets accused of, like, talking to the outside world, forbidden stuff, and they kick him out. Thrown back is what they call it.
Orolo getting exiled, that's huge. Raises all sorts of questions. Was he really talking to the secular world? And if he was, what was he looking for? He seems like the kind of guy always pushing for knowledge, even if it means breaking the rules.
It's that classic problem, right? How do you learn new stuff but still keep things stable? Especially if that knowledge, like, shakes up your whole society.
Totally. And then you got to add in their whole cosmology. They believe a bunch of universes. Cosmi, they call them. And there's this place with all possible universes called Hemspace. One of their old fries, Pat Lagan, he even predicted you could see something special at their Starhenge, this old observatory they got.
Okay, now things are getting seriously weird. And then there's the Teglon, some ancient geometric problem with tiling, I think. It's, like, connected to how they see this whole multi-universe thing. Plus, Erasmus sees this blue sparker in the sky. Doesn't act like any normal star or anything.
Yeah, the Teglon, it's more than just, like, some puzzle. It really messes with how they see reality. If there's all these universes like they think, then what are the rules? And how do those rules connect to, our physics and math and all that?
It's like they're trying to map out, like, the structure of reality, using math as their guide. Pretty ambitious. Oh, and then, because it wasn't complicated enough already, aliens show up. They call them the geometers. They show up on, get this, Arbra seems to be their word for, wait for it, Earth.
The geometers showing up, that's what throws everything into chaos. Really shakes up the balance between the consents and the secular world. Now, the Avowed, they got to face the reality they've been trying so hard to avoid.
And they're not just watching from the sidelines. The secular folks, they actually call on certain Avowed, Erasmus is one of them, to help with this whole geometer mess about that being thrown in the deep end.
It's crazy. The Out, they've spent their whole lives thinking and being isolated. Now they're in the middle of this crisis that could destroy their whole world.
Yeah, all that theoretical knowledge, suddenly it's got to be put to the test. Got to figure out how to use it in a situation they never could have even imagined.
And it's not just about surviving, it's about understanding.
Yeah.
The Avowed, they see math and the universe in this unique way. They might be the key to figuring out the geometers and what they're doing.
You're right. So they find this alien probe, dead female geometer inside, and a box of blood samples. Then they start building this thing called a cold black mirror and get this, talk to the aliens. This is where things get really wild.
It's cool how the book mixes their ancient traditions with, like, super advanced tech.
Yeah.
The Avoweds aren't just philosophers and mathematicians, they're engineers, inventors, too.
Yeah, and Erasmus, he actually gets to go inside the geometer's spaceship. He says it's like this crazy, complex, almost living thing. Their tech is way beyond anything we've ever seen.
That's what Stephenson's so good at. Making alien tech, it's like mind-blowing, but kind of scary too. Makes you wonder, what if we met aliens so advanced their tech seemed like magic?
Makes you think, right? And it's all from years of touring before in-ear monitors were a thing.
Makes you wonder, what if we met aliens so advanced their tech seemed like magic?
Exactly. Before we get too lost in the cosmos, let's do a quick roll call of the main players. First, we've got Erasmus, our narrator. Young, brilliant Frar, obviously way out of his depth, but also really curious, wants to learn everything.
He's the kind of character you root for, because he represents that desire to learn that drives the whole book. Always asking questions, pushing boundaries, trying to understand.
Then there's his mentor, Fra Orolo. Total enigma. I don't know what he's really up to, but he definitely breaks the rules to get what he wants, especially when it comes to knowledge.
He makes you think about what it means to be a mentor and the responsibility that comes with knowing things, right?
Yeah, definitely. We've also got Artisan Quinn, friend of Erasmus from the secular world. Seems like he knows stuff he shouldn't, and might be more involved in this geometer situation than we realize.
It kind of shows how the line between the avowed and the secular world is kind of blurry. Information can travel in weird ways.
Absolutely. And then there's Cord, Erasmus's sister. She's from the secular world, too. Super talented engineer. Her practical skills are going to be really important when it comes to dealing with all this alien tech.
She's like a different approach to knowledge, less theory, more hands-on.
Right. Then we got some interesting swerves. Sir Alla, Erasmus totally has a thing for her. She becomes a leader during the geometer crisis. And Sword Tulia, super sharp, becomes Erasmus's confidante.
Both of them, they challenge those old ideas about what women can and can't do, show they're just as smart and capable as the phrase.
Totally. And rounding out the crew, we got Sam Mon, secular leader. He's the one who brings Erasmus into the whole geometer mess. And Frau Ledeur, he's an avowed leader, helps Erasmus navigate the complicated politics of the convox.
They represent the different power structures in the book, both inside the conscience and in the wider world.
Man, that was a lot. But I think we've laid the groundwork for what's going to be a crazy ride. What really jumps out at you so far?
What really gets me is how the book sets up this clash between two totally different ways of seeing the universe. You got the avowed with their old traditions and all their focus on math. And then you got the geometers with their crazy tech and how they see reality, like in multiple dimensions. It's going to be explosive, but we might learn something amazing along the way.
Oh, and don't forget all the mysteries we've already got. The Warden of Heaven, why Orolo got exiled, the Blue Sparker, and that whole Teglon thing. It's like we're seeing pieces of a puzzle, but we don't know the full picture yet.
The question is, how do all these pieces fit together? And what's going to happen to Erasmus, the avowed, even Earth itself? We'll find out soon enough.
Hold on tight, folks, because I have a feeling things are about to get really wild.
Hey, remember those tiling problems, the ones connected to the Teglon? They're not just some like brain teaser. It's like they're woven into the fabric of reality in this world.
The vow.
It's like they're trying to crack the code of the universe with geometry.
Oh, yeah, the Teglon. Remind me about that again. It was something about an ancient Fra who got obsessed with this tiling problem, right?
Right. His name was Metacaranes, and the story is he died trying to solve it. They even found his skeleton perfectly preserved, still posed like he was thinking about those tiles. Kind of creepy, but it shows you how seriously the avowed took this problem.
Talk about dedication. But how does a tiling problem connect to all these multiple universes? Seems like a big jump to me.
And the book makes that jump beautifully. It all goes back to hemp space, that realm with all the possible universes. Think of it like this. Each tiling pattern, it's like a different universe, a different configuration of reality.
Okay, I'm starting to see it. So the Teglon, it's like a key to understanding how all these different universes are structured.
Pretty wild, right? And, Orolo, Erasmus' mentor, the one who got kicked out, well, he's been thinking about the geometers, and he's starting to believe they might be from one of these other universes.
Whoa, so not just aliens. We're talking ultra aliens. But how did he figure that out? He didn't exactly have access to their spaceships or anything.
That's what's so cool about it. He had to rely on, get this, self-observation. He thinks that by studying the human mind, how it sees reality, its limits, what it can do, he can learn about consciousness itself. And consciousness, he says, it's not limited to just one universe.
Hold on. So our minds are like windows to the, the polycosm? We can see other realities?
Mind-blowing, right? That's what makes Anathem so amazing. It makes you question everything you thought you knew about reality? What if what we see as the universe is just a tiny part of something much bigger?
It's like those moments when you suddenly realize the world is way more complex than you ever thought.
Exactly. And that changes everything, not just for the Avowed, but for us too.
Yeah.
If there are other universes, other realities, I mean, what does that mean for, like, our place in the cosmos? What's possible? What's dangerous?
And on a more practical level, there's the whole geometer situation. The
Mhm.
secular world is freaking out. It's like they're looking to the avowed, these like scholars who've been living in isolation to save the day.
Total role reversal, right?
Yeah.
The Avowed, they always tried to stay away from worldly stuff, but now they're right in the middle of this crisis that could wipe out their whole way of life.
And they're dealing with stuff they never even imagined, like spaceships and crazy advanced tech and what it means to meet something way smarter than us, all while trying to stick to their principles and deal with the politics of the con box. It's a lot.
It's like two worlds colliding. The Avowed, with all their math and cosmology, they represent one way of seeing things. The secular world, with their tech and pragmatism, they represent another.
So how do they even start talking to these geometers? I mean, their language, their tech, it's so advanced. It's like trying to, I don't know, teach a dog to play chess.
And that's where their understanding of theorics comes in. They realize that math, that's a universal language. It goes beyond words spoken or written. It's a way to connect with something totally different from us.
Right. Math, the universal language. So they use it to build the cold black mirror, like an interstellar translator. Pretty genius, even if it's super risky.
And the risks, they're huge. Remember, the geometers, they're not all the same. They got different factions, different goals. Some want to talk, some see humans as a threat.
Speaking of threats, things get really tense when they realize that probe they found, it wasn't supposed to be there. Someone sent it down illegally, and that female geometer, she was murdered. It's like they stumbled into some kind of galactic turf war.
Makes you think, what's the bigger picture? What do the geometers really want? And what does it mean for Earth?
And the stakes get even higher when the main geometer faction, they retaliate for that probe thing. They Rod Ekba, someplace in the secular world, cause massive destruction. Talk about overkill.
Yeah, a terrifying show of force. It reminds you that we're just caught in the middle of something we don't even understand.
But what I love is how Stephenson takes these big questions about knowledge and reality and weaves them into a story about, like, alien invasion. It's War and Peace meets Close Encounters.
Totally. It works on so many levels.
Yeah.
It's a thriller full of suspense and action, but it's also about consciousness, what we can and can't know, and finding meaning in a universe that's always expanding.
And speaking of expanding, we got to talk about one of the craziest ideas in the book, world tracks.
Ah, yes, world tracks. The idea that every person, every possible event, it exists as a separate track in hemspace. It's like every decision you make, every path you choose, it splits reality, creates a new timeline where you made the other choice.
So there's a world track where I'm a Grammy-winning podcast host, and another where well, let's not go there. But that's a lot to process. Is this like that many worlds thing in quantum mechanics?
Kind of, but Stephenson takes it way further. He's saying all possibilities, all potential realities, they exist at the same time. It messes with how we see time. Makes you wonder about free will, about choice.
If every choice creates a new world track, does that mean our choices don't matter? Or are all those world tracks connected somehow, influencing each other in ways we can't even grasp?
That's the big question the book asks. It's both exciting and scary. Exciting because reality could be limitless. But scary because what if there's no meaning, no purpose in a multiverse where anything is possible?
It's like looking into one of those kaleidoscopes and seeing infinite reflections of yourself, each living a different life, making different choices.
And the geometers, they seem to understand world tracks way better than we do. What they do, it might seem random, even cruel to us, but it could be because they're using information from multiple world tracks.
So they could be acting based on information from other world tracks, trying to stop something terrible from happening in our world track, even if it means destroying another one.
It's a possibility, and it brings up all these ethical questions. What can you justify doing when you're dealing with multiple realities? Can you sacrifice one world to save another? What happens when right and wrong get all mixed up across different universes?
Those are some heavy questions, but that's what makes Anathem so much more than just a sci-fi story. It makes you think outside the box to see how complex reality could be, how interconnected.
And the book doesn't shy away from that complexity. It embraces it, explores it, makes you face the fact that maybe we don't have all the answers, that reality itself is always changing.
And it's not all abstract concepts either. It shows you how the characters experience this new reality, how they struggle to adapt. It makes it real.
Exactly. You see Erasmus trying to wrap his head around world tracks, Frajad holding onto his beliefs, and Cord, she uses her engineering skills to try and connect with the geometers. Each character shows you a different way of approaching the unknown.
And don't forget the details about the geometers tech, like new matter. They can literally manipulate matter at the subatomic level.
It's like magic, but it's all based on a deep understanding of physics and math. And the Avowed, with their own knowledge of theorics, they start to figure out how new matter works. They even start developing their own applications.
It's like they're not just fighting the geometers, they're trying to learn from them, to understand how they think, to find common ground in the language of math. Even when the other side has such advanced tech, the human desire to learn, it can still win out.
And that desire to learn, it can bring people together in unexpected ways. You see the Avowed working with secular engineers and scientists, sharing their knowledge to face this threat. It shows you the power of collaboration, how important it is to bridge the gap between different ways of thinking.
Like they're realizing that those old divisions, Avowed versus secular, it doesn't matter anymore when you're facing this kind of threat. They got to work together to survive.
Totally. And working together, that might be the key to understanding the geometers, why they're here. But it's not going to be easy. There are still secrets, risks, sacrifices.
Speaking of risks, things get real when Erasmus and Frajad, the Thousander, they get sent on this top-secret mission to the geometer's spaceship.
This is where the book goes into overdrive. Intellectual stuff mixed with pure suspense. Erasmus and Jad, they're going into the unknown, literally into the lion's den. No guarantee they're coming back.
And it's not just a physical journey, right? It's a journey into the heart of the geometer's world. They're going to see their tech, their way of seeing reality firsthand.
It's going to challenge everything they believe in, push them to their limits, and in the end, they're going to have to redefine who they are and where they fit in the universe.
Yeah, remember how we talked about the Avowed's linear view of time versus the geometer's multidimensional view? Well, things are about to get really interesting as Erasmus and Jad experience that firsthand.
Buckle up, folks. Things are about to get wild.
So last time we were talking about Erasmus and Frajad getting ready to go into the geometer's spaceship. This thing is like, I don't know, an alien cathedral or something. Built with tech so advanced, it's practically holy. What do you think that must have been like for them?
Well, the way Erasmus tells it, the ship isn't really a machine, more like a living thing. It's huge, and you can't tell where the tech ends and, like, the organic stuff begins.
Yeah, and you gotta remember, these guys come from a world where tech is, like, super restricted. Suddenly they're face to face with something they can't even understand. Must have been amazing and terrifying all at the same time.
It's like they stepped into another dimension. The rules of physics, biology, everything they thought they knew, it all goes out the window.
So what'd they find in this alien wonderland?
It's not just about the tech. It's about the geometers themselves. Erasmus and Jad, they get these glimpses of how the geometers live, their rituals, their whole weird way of seeing time and reality. Totally different from anything the Avowed had believed.
Like trying to talk to something that evolved on a planet with different laws of physics. Makes you question everything.
And it's so interesting how they each react. Erasmus, he's got an open mind, and his background in theorics, it makes him more willing to, like, accept what he doesn't know, try to see things from the geometer's point of view. Jad, though, he's holding on tight to his beliefs, trying to make sense of it all without, giving up his faith.
It's that classic struggle, faith versus reason, tradition versus progress. It's all over the book.
Totally. Erasmus is like an anthropologist or something, studying the geometers, trying to figure out their culture, why they do what they do. He's even starting to get this whole world track thing, sees glimpses of other realities, like the geometers are unlocking something in his mind.
Whoa, so he's having like out-of-body experiences on an alien spaceship. That's some next-level stuff.
Shows you how powerful the mind is, how it can adapt, even when you're dealing with something totally alien.
What about Jad, though? He's a Thousander, all about rituals and tradition. How does he deal with all this?
Jad's journey is all about faith and doubt. He starts out resisting the geometers, holding on to what he knows. But then he sees their tech, the amazing things it can do, the terrible things too. And he sees Erasmus, how he's accepting this new reality. Jad's certainty starts to waver.
It's like the book is saying, even when you believe in something deeply, the unknown can make you question everything.
Exactly. It's about being brave enough to question, to change, to admit that you might be wrong about some pretty basic stuff. And it's not about losing your faith. It's about finding a way for faith and reason to exist together in a world that's constantly changing.
So what's the point of their mission to the spaceship? Are they trying to make peace with the geometers, team up with them? Or is it something even crazier?
That's the thing about Anathem. It doesn't give you easy answers.
Yeah.
Leaves you with questions, mysteries that stick with you. The details of the mission are, like, top secret. Even Erasmus and Jad don't know everything. But you know the stakes are high. Not just for the avowed, but for all of humanity.
So wrapping things up, what are the big takeaways from this deep dive? What are the aha moments you hope our listeners will get?
Well, Anathem shows you that the universe is way more complex and mysterious than we can even imagine. It makes you think bigger, embrace the unknown, and never stop questioning, like, what is reality even?
It's also about how powerful humans are, our sense of wonder, our need to learn, how we can adapt, even when things get really tough.
And it's a story that sticks with you, makes you curious, makes you wonder. It just keeps growing in your mind.
Stephenson gives us this glimpse of a universe full of possibilities, where science and spirituality, tech and consciousness, it all blends together. And he wants us to explore it, to ask our own questions, find our own answers.
I think the biggest question Anathem asks is, what does it mean to be human in a universe that's so vast, so strange?
Definitely something to think about. We just scratched the surface of this book, but I hope our deep dive gave you a sense how brilliant it is, how deep the questions are. Now it's your turn. What stood out to you? What mysteries are still bugging you? What did you learn from our trip into the world of Anathem? Share your thoughts, your theories, your aha moments. Let's keep the conversation going.
Did you get any of that?